For Trump, a quick combative defense. Trial nears the end. Former president's lawyers repeat 2020 campaign falsehoods. Washington. Donald Trump's lawyers delivered a relatively brief defense of the former president's conduct in his second impeachment trial Friday, accusing House Democrats of staging a politically motivated proceeding in a rebuttal that echoed Trump's misleading claims about the 2020 presidential election. The centerpiece of the Trump attorney's case was a video that edited together one Democratic official after another using the word fight. While meant to argue that Democrats, too, use potentially violent rhetoric, many of the comments were taken out of context and none led to incidents of violence. Trump's lawyers used just 2.5 of the 16 hours allotted to them for their defense, their brevity underscoring that at least 34 Republican senators are expected to vote to acquit Trump and allow him to escape the prospect of being barred from public office. Oh boy, this case is speeding toward a vote, perhaps as soon as Saturday. I would hopefully be able to be home watching that on TV or something. The defense presentation was rife with the sort of falsehoods that marked Trump's campaign and his unsuccessful effort to overturn the election results. Lawyers spread Trump's contention that President Joe Biden did not win the state of Georgia, implied that Antifa and other leftists were involved in the planning of the January 6th attack on the Capitol, and accused Democratic House managers of withholding key evidence. Trump's lawyers declined to be specific on questions about Trump's behavior while rioters broke into the U.S. Capitol to block the final certification of Biden's victory over Trump, such as precisely when he found out about the violence, what he knew about Vice President Mike Pence's safety, and whether he took any action to limit the insurrection. This unprecedented effort is not about Democrats opposing political violence. It is about Democrats trying to disqualify their political opposition, said Michael Van Der Veen, one of Trump's defense attorneys. It is constitutional cancel culture. I have lots of thoughts on why cancel culture isn't really a thing. Tune in later when I really go off the rails about commentary. Now, just one moment. Of course, not to mention that constitutional cancel culture seems like pot calling the kettle black, and if you read the transcript of Michael Van Der Veen, you'll be impressed with how eloquently he dodges literally every question. So, Van Der Veen said the House impeachment managers laid out a case that was, quote, completely divorced from the facts. Attorney David Schoen argued that the fatal insurrection ran contrary to Trump's law and order message, and he accused Democrats of hatred, vitriol, and political opportunism. Bruce Castor Jr., the third lawyer on Trump's legal team, tried to distinguish between the physical attack on the Capitol and the former president's words to his supporters that day by noting that many aspects of the siege were planned beforehand. Left out of Castor's remarks was Trump's long drumbeat of accusations that the election had been rigged and that the theft needed to be reversed, including his December 19th tweet encouraging his backers to come to Washington, D.C. on January 6th and adding, "Be there, it will be wild." In the defense team's arguments could be heard the echoes of the strategy from Trump's first impeachment trial last year, as his lawyers decried a sham impeachment that was a witch hunt against the 45th president who had antagonized Democrats from his first day in office. They ran video of multiple Democrats calling for Trump's impeachment beginning in the early days of his presidency, and lambasted the Democratic managers for failing to fully investigate the Capitol violence, while castigating them for trying to impeach a former president. But Trump's lawyers struggled to answer questions posed by senators Friday after their argument concluded. At one point, a Trump lawyer asserted that the former president was not told Pence's safety was at risk, contradicting public comments from Senator Tommy Tuberville, who has said that he alerted Trump that day that the vice president had just been swept out of the threatened Senate chamber. Pence was pulled from the room by Secret Service at 2:13 p.m., and senators had fully evacuated the chamber by about 2:30 p.m., the window during which the call was made. The question centered on a tweet Trump sent at 2:24 p.m. that criticized Pence for declining to buckle to his pressure and refusing to certify the election. In earlier Democratic testimony, rioters were shown reading aloud the Trump tweet and screaming, "Hang Mike Pence," as they assaulted the Capitol. Quote, "At no point was the president informed the vice president was in any danger," Van Der Veen said. "Because the House rushed through this impeachment in 7 days with no evidence, there is nothing at all in the record on this point." Trump's lawyers also could not answer, in response to questions from key Republican senators, when exactly Trump learned of the Capitol breach or what specific actions he initially took to end the rioting. Quote, "The House managers have given us absolutely no information about that," Castor said in a response to the questions from Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. About Trump, he did not explain whether he had sought the information from his client. About half a dozen or so Senate Republicans are being closely watched as potential votes on conviction, including Collins and Murkowski, as well as Senators Mitt Romney, Ben Sass, I apologize, I've never been able to pronounce it consistently, Patrick Toomey, and Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who voted this week that trying a president who was no longer in office was constitutionally sound. But most GOP senators have been ardent defenders of Trump's lack of culpability, even as they criticize the former president's general tone and behavior. A handful of Senate Republicans, including Ted Cruz of Texas, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, and Mike Lee of Utah, have met with Trump's legal team during the trial, strategizing and advising them, and being completely partial on the jury. Last commentary my own. Among those featured in the many video splices was Biden's new Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Dennis McDonough. In his confirmation hearing, McDonough is shown as saying that, "I'm a fighter and I'm relentless," remarks that in context were clear he meant he would fight on behalf of veterans. Trump's attorneys also showed numerous clips of Democratic senators talking about fighting, but admitting that they would battle for health care coverage for millions of Americans or to combat climate change. Quote, "Show me any time that the results was our supporters pulled someone out of the crowd, beat the living crap out of them, and then we said, 'That's great, good for you, you're a patriot,'" said Senators Christopher Coons, reacting to the footage. House managers refuted one assertion that Trump's team that the Democrats had withheld new evidence from the former president's defense lawyers or selectively edited tweets and videos shown during the trial. Van der Veen suggested earlier Friday that the new video footage from surveillance cameras inside the Capitol on January 6th had been deliberately withheld from the public and Trump's team ahead of the Senate trial. But a senior aide to the House Democratic managers said Friday that Trump's team was given the full trial record, including all videos and audio, before the start of the trial, and a Trump lawyer later acknowledged receiving information days earlier. The senators' question and answer period, which began and concluded Friday, served essentially as a rebuttal period for House managers to respond to the Trump team's accusations. Representative Jamie Raskin, the lead impeachment manager, reacted in disbelief to assertions from Trump's lawyers that the president's remarks at the January 6th rally were, quote, "totally appropriate," and said the Senate must act to ensure a violent insurrection at the Capitol never recurs. Quote, "Come on, get real. We know that this is what happened," Raskin said as he reminded senators of the series of events and rallies held by the president in the lead up to January 6th. Quote, "Violence all over the rallies, the president cheering it on, delighting in it, reveling in it, exulting in it. Come on, how gullible do you think we are?" Raskin said, his voice rising. "We saw this happen. We just spent 11 or 12 hours looking at all of that." That is the first article from the front page. I would note that soon after this article went to print, most likely, and after the conclusion of the closing or the remarks earlier that day, the call between McCarthy and Trump came to light and should serve to strengthen the impeachment argument. Thank you very much for joining us for this installment of the Seattle Times.